Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome to a podcast. Not only is this a podcast, but it's our journey. A journey that we hope you want to ride out with us as we intend to educate you guys, inspire, talk about past and current experiences, and to make one think to stop judging others, most importantly, stop judging yourself based on others' views and perceptions. With that said, you'll be hearing from me, myself, Austin Kirshner, but along with our journey on this podcast will be my mother, Kathy Kirshner, and my brother, Dylan Kirshner. With that said, welcome to Silencing of Stigma. We're going back to the roots. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. This is Silencing of Stigma podcast. We have a special guest with us today, along with my mom. She's with me right now, and my brother Dylan will be showing up later, and my dad possibly might show up too. But our special guest for today is Michelle. How are you doing, Michelle?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. This is the first time we've met, and it's a little weird, not gonna lie, but hey, we're giving this a shot. And if you wanna go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, go from there. We'll just feed off that.
Okay, cool.
Wait, I'm just going to interrupt you 1 second quick. We want to tell everyone that Lydia's with us here today, too. So if you hear a little one in the background, she has her microphone. Do you want to say hi?
Mikey, up here.
You want to see up there? No.
She wants to see upstairs, but she has her microphone, and she's ready to talk at any time.
Yeah.
And she can. So go ahead, Michelle. We're excited to have you here.
All right. Well, as it's been said, I'm Michelle. I started using probably when I was 18, 19. I started with pills, of course. It was a lot easier to get. And once I started with Vicodin, I ended up having like an ingrown toenail, and it hurt so bad, and I got surgery, and my dad had Vicodin sitting around the house, and so of course that's how I started. And once I did that, I was like, this is amazing. And I was working at a Subway, and when I went to work, my coworker was like, man, you're so outgoing and like everything, you're such a better mood and you're really organized. Like, what's your deal? And I was like, oh man, I took this Vicodin. This is great. And she's like, oh, well, I sell that. And I was like, take all my money. Like, I work for you now. And I used for probably like 2 or 3 months, and everything was fine. Like, I just stopped and I didn't feel anything from it, and everything went good. But then I started doing in-home care too. I was kind of bouncing back and forth from Subway to in-home care. And once I started doing in-home care full time, my dad was like this hippy dippy dude that like loves the environment and everything. And the guy that I took care of, he had a father-in-law who was abusing his drugs and doctor hopping. This guy was like 90 years old.
Oh my
like
gosh.
He was ancient.
When you say doctor hopping,
Yep.
is that what you said? What do you mean by that?
So that's where like you go to one doctor and you say, these are the problems I'm having. And they say, here's all these medications.
Okay.
And then you go to the next doctor and you're like, hey, I'm having all these problems. And that doctor gives you a bunch of medications. So by the end of the week, you could see a lot of doctors, and you could have a lot of medication of the same things.
Gotcha.
So that way it's easier to abuse. So you're basically, your doctors are your drug dealers.
And that's why they now have that system at the hospital where the computer tells them.
Yep. And I did hear that the ER is like no longer doing opiate prescriptions.
Really?
Like, you'd have to be dying carrying your leg to get an opiate prescription.
Wow.
And some of them would be like what, your Oxycontin and
Oxycontin, Vicodin, Percocet, anything like that. I do believe Toradol's now like a scheduled.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever heard of that.
It's not an opiate, but I know that a lot of people were abusing it.
Right.
So they sent him to a drug rehab.
Right.
And
At 90?
at like 90.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. He like wrecked his car. I mean, it was bad. He was just like an actual like user, but really old. And They gave me 2 gallon Ziploc bags full of pills. And they said, can you ask your dad how to dispose them, or can you have him dispose them for us, because we don't know what to do. We want to do the environmentally friendly way. And
Gotcha.
I was like, well, that's in my body, so we'll keep it very environmentally friendly. So I think that's really where my addiction set off, was 4 days after taking pills consistently, handfuls at a time, and not getting any sleep. I wrecked my car, and that's when my he was my best friend, but like turning into a boyfriend guy. He was like, listen, really like you, but I don't want to like a drug addict, so get your life together. And I was like, I got this. So I got it for 2 months. And then, like every good drug addict, I was like, I can keep it in check. I know the signs to look for now. And so it took about 3 months after that to become shooting Percocet IV instead of taking them orally. And then I moved from that to heroin. And so from the start to heroin, from pills to heroin, it took about 1.5 years, if that.
So you started on pills and then you went to heroin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now the pills, how do you take them? Is there different ways?
Yeah. So I did I bought Percocet and I started taking them orally, and then I started snorting those, and then I moved to shooting those, and then I moved to shooting heroin, because at that point it's like it's just a different color liquid in my syringe, and it's cheaper.
What's the color difference for people that are listening? They don't know.
So the Percocets that I was getting, they're a blue color, and heroin's more of like a brown color.
Okay.
But I think now we've moved. This was years ago. I'm older now. So we've moved more into the fentanyl. And fentanyl's more of like a clear color when you shoot that. So
Gotcha.
You can almost tell like if somebody's ripped you off or not by what color you have.
So fentanyl is one of the newer drugs. People actually buy it knowing that they're buying fentanyl.
Yes.
Okay.
So my last relapse was on fentanyl. So let me see. I pretty much did the same, like did what every single drug addict did. Like they got their DUI, they hit rock bottom a few times. I went to rehab a few times. But getting out of rehab the last time, that was where things got a little bit more serious for me. Like I definitely went down the road that everybody goes. Like I was homeless. I lost all my belongings several times. I got kicked out of places. I had a few legal problems, but I never went to jail. So I just seemed to always get lucky and not have to go to jail. So nothing was really serious for me until the last time I relapsed. I moved in with a guy that was selling fentanyl. I had dated the guy that told me he didn't want to date a drug addict. We used together for about 7 years, and he went to jail. Yeah.
Okay, I'm making a face now. Okay.
I went to detox after my DUI, and he went to jail during detox because he was stealing stuff. And of course I went to call him from detox and the phone was off. So I was thinking he was like overdosed and that I was going to come home to a whole entire mess. And we were renting a room like by the week. So I couldn't stay in rehab longer or anything because I didn't know what I was going to come home to. And I need to get our stuff before we couldn't have it any longer. And when I came home, I found out that he was in jail. So when he called me from jail, I broke up with him. And when that happened, I was obviously homeless because I did not have any money from detox to pay for my room. So I moved all my stuff out of my room into like my roommate's room because it was a rooming house. So that's basically like a house with like 7 rooms and you all rent a room and there's a lock on your door, and then you all share the same common areas. So I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have any money. I didn't have anything. So I went back to my roots and applied at a Subway. I was living in the ghetto of Harrisburg, and I went there, got the job, and the guy's kind of looking at me. He's like, well, I'll call you. And I'm like, well, I don't have a phone that actually works. And he's like, okay, so my boss gave me like $60 to go buy a phone card for my phone, and then asked me if I even had clothes to wear for the job. And I was like, no. So he picked me up that night. We went shopping. He bought me all kinds of pants and stuff that I could be able to wear to work. Complete saint, thank goodness, because I had no idea what I was going to do. And lovely Facebook reconnected me with somebody that I went to school with. So it turned out this guy, he lived like 3 houses down from the Subway that I applied at, which was weird because we both grew up in Brogue and somehow we both ended up in Harrisburg. So we started dating, and it was about a whole 3 hours and 27 seconds before I moved all my stuff into his house.
Wow.
Because I was homeless. I had nowhere to go, and that was right beside my job. I was living like a mile and a half away from my job. So I was walking that probably for almost a week before I was living at his house.
Okay.
And he was like on parole, but, you know, getting his life together, and really seemed like he was doing good. And we were together for probably about a month before he got off parole. And as he was walking home from signing the papers from being off parole, he called me and was like, I just ordered a bunch of fentanyl and carfentanil, and we're going to start selling drugs. And I was like, well, that's awesome, because I've been trying to relapse and have no money to do so, and you're going to have a bunch of drugs. So ship them to Subway. So that's what happened. He ended up ordering them online and shipped it to Subway. And about 2 weeks later, we had this magazine that was filled with a bunch of drugs from China.
So you can order drugs.
So you ordered them from China.
Yeah.
This is the first time I ever heard that. That's crazy.
They put it in a magazine.
Yeah. They put it in a magazine.
They took like sections of the pages out and just like stored it in there?
No, friend. It was just one big bag.
One big bag in the middle of a magazine.
One big bag in the middle of a magazine. And it was like just a little manila envelope that the magazine came in, and couldn't even tell you what kind of magazine it was. At this point, this carfentanil had just come around, and we weren't very educated about it. So it was kind of what you were reading in the news was like, if you're even in the same room, you'll die. So when the UPS man came in, I was just kind of like, I don't want to touch it. Like, I don't want to die, but thank you. I need this.
Oh my gosh.
So
UPS shipped it.
Yeah.
It got through the UPS system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And I, of course, accepted it. And then, you know, people that I work with was like, oh, what did you get? And I'm like, don't touch it. Like, because I was terrified.
Scared.
I didn't know. Yeah, I had no idea. So, of course, he like did some, I mean, it looked like coronavirus had nothing on what he was dressed like in our kitchen to mix this whole little mixture thing up, because you take the fentanyl. If you'd use straight fentanyl, you would pass away. Like, it's very, very deadly. So you have to cut it. Well, he would cut it with carfentanil, and then he would cut it 17 other ways that I knew nothing about.
So when you say cut it, it means mix. You mix it?
Yeah, so
Okay.
you're mixing it in, so you're mixing other things in with it, so that way it makes it less potent.
Okay.
So he was like dressed in this biohazard mess.
Because it would kill you.
Yeah, because we didn't know. We didn't know, like, if you touched it, if anything bad would happen or what, and we didn't really want to take the chance. So he would do that, and every 2 weeks, that's how it would happen. And we would just cook up more and keep selling it, and we couldn't keep it.
So you sold it.
Yeah. So of course, I mean, if you would ask my mom, he like sought me out, I don't know, whatever. But we were basically the perfect team. He didn't have any customers, and I knew users and who needed better drugs. So
would you consider yourself a dealer then at one point?
Yeah, at one point.
You did it to support yourself as far as getting money, so.
Yes, but he never knew I was using, I don't
so
think.
You had the drugs to use.
I had the drugs to use. I had the friends to use it with, and I never had to pay a dime for it. And
would you say you ended up using more yourself than what you sold? Just because you had the access to it?
No.
It was that big.
Yeah.
How much money do you think you would make in a week?
Okay, so we broke up about 2 months into selling. He, shocker, was a piece of crap and pretty abusive, and hey, that's what happens. So in the 2 months, I ended up leaving with $25,000 in cash. I took half of what we made because I was pregnant and I needed money for my kid. And I ended up blowing it all on drugs anyways and giving it all back to him. But we could make $10,000. We went to Hawaii. Listen, I know nobody says this, but it was the most miserable trip of my entire life.
Why you say that?
Because he was along. It was terrible. So he left his wallet in the car, and somehow that was my fault. So he was like screaming because we had an Uber in Hawaii, and he had both of our IDs because I clearly wasn't capable of just holding on to my own identification. And so it fell out of his back pocket. I don't know. Somehow he left it on the seat, and he's like screaming at me to the point where like this little man comes out of an ice cream shop and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to call the cops. Like, calm down." Yeah. I mean, it was miserable. He proposed. I had to say yes.
You felt like you had to say yes. Why?
Yeah. 'Cause first off, he had my ID, friend. I would have been stuck in Hawaii, which couldn't be the worst thing in the world.
So you said yes.
So I said yes, and I came home and broke up with him.
Oh my gosh, she waited till she got home.
I waited like 2 weeks after I got home.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, Hawaii was beautiful though. It was gorgeous. They have really good food and better coffee, but yeah, that trip was miserable.
That's interesting.
So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I was at the airport. I sent my mom, a selfie and was like, "Get ready to come home. Miss you so much." And my mom was like, "Are you pregnant?" And I was like, "No, you freaking jerk. I'm fat." Like, what's wrong with you? I was like, "Who asked somebody that?" And she's like, "It's not your weight, Michelle. It's your face." And I was like, "My face looks pregnant."
Oh my gosh.
What's wrong with you? And yeah, so I got home. 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant.
How far along were you? When you found out?
When I found out, I was 2 weeks and 5 days.
And your mom knew
my mom
from that
knew.
day.
Wow.
My mom knew. And at this point I was using for probably about a month and a half. But you're not really regular as a female when you're using. So it wasn't uncommon for me to miss a period here or there. And I didn't really think twice about it. And my mom kept saying that I was pregnant. And I was like, "You're freaking crazy." And so I took a couple tests because then I kind of got scared and was like, "Oh my God, she's right." And it kept coming back negative. So I just kept telling her she was a jerk.
So what were you using at that point?
Just the fentanyl.
Just the fentanyl.
So
this is before the heroin.
This was after.
After.
Yeah. So this is probably in my 11 years of using.
And you said it wasn't an opioid. Fentanyl's not?
Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid.
Okay.
So it's like more man-made. So if you take it and you take a drug test, you're not going to fail for opiates because it's fake. But it still affects you the same way, and it still gives you the same
high
results.
Okay.
Better high.
So fentanyl is actually, in your opinion, is better than heroin. The high.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if I've ever heard people talk about fentanyl.
Michelle's our first person talking about fentanyl. So we're learning from you, because we always heard that, or we were told that people didn't know that fentanyl was in their heroin.
Yeah. So it became.
So what did Kyle, was that in Kyle's heroin, fentanyl?
Yeah, Kyle died of the fentanyl that was in the heroin.
Yeah, so for some reason, in the beginning of like the fentanyl phase, dealers would lie about it. Like they felt like, I guess, users didn't want to know, and that they really loved the word heroin, and if that's what they were using, that's what they wanted, and that's what they would call it. I remember when Lydia's dad was like, I said, well, are we just going to tell people it's heroin? And he was like, no, we're going to tell them it's fentanyl. And I was like, why? Like, that didn't connect for me. As a user, I was very confused. Like, why nobody wants fentanyl? Everybody wants heroin. Why would we tell people that we were selling fentanyl? And it went crazy. And now we're, 3.5, 4 years later, where fentanyl is a huge thing, and people realize that, unfortunately, that's what people are passing away from. So that's what everybody wants.
Because it gives them that high.
It gives them that better high, and it's a quicker high, I'll say, but it's a higher high. So you kind of.
So you can combine that with heroin to get.
Well, fentanyl's more deadly, right?
I mean, so
So you were taking it just strictly fentanyl?
Yes. Way back in the day, when I first started using heroin, I would get the fentanyl strips. They had little gel in them, and I would cut those open, and I would squirt some of that in my heroin, because it was just a better high. But when I used strictly fentanyl, it was just a very quick high. Like, when I used heroin, I could probably use 3 times a day, and I would be okay at like the peak of my use. Fentanyl, at the peak of my use, I would have to use like 6 to 8 times a day.
Because it was just so quick.
Because it was so quick. And then the next morning I'm waking up and like I'm having my delivery lady be there in the morning ASAP. So it's a shorter, better high, but it's shorter. And these days I don't think heroin really exists anymore.
Really?
I would assume not. I don't think many people like.
But like to your point,
actually have heroin.
They call it heroin though.
Yeah, they'll call it.
Even though it's just.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Because I don't think I've seen like real people heroin for probably, now I've been clean 3.5 years, so maybe 7 or 8 years. Even when I broke up with my first boyfriend of 7 years, our dealer started giving us something that was white, and I called him and was like, "You better give me my money back." Blah, 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 blah. And he was like, "Try it and then call me back." And I was like, "Okay." Sold.
Okay.
You don't have to.
Yeah, because your mindset at the point was,
I already wasted the money.
Yeah, and then you were willing to try the next thing. It was like, screw it. Like, I've already done that, so might as well just try this now because I'm here. Right?
Well, so I was like, maybe I'm the one that's losing my mind, and maybe it just looks white, and it's gonna turn brown when I get it wet. So I was like, okay, like I'll try it. And I was, shocker, working at Subway, and I was like in the bathroom, and I couldn't tell you how long I was in that bathroom. I mean, I probably fell out immediately using it.
That was your first time?
That was my first time, and I had no idea what it was. No idea that fentanyl was even like a thing. In my day, it was this gel or this sticker that you put on you. There was never a fentanyl powder. Even when I went to rehab and told them that I was using fentanyl, they looked at me like I was nuts, because they said, "Well, how much?" And I'm like, "I don't know, a couple grams a day." And they're like, "You would die." And I'm like, "Okay, but obviously it's cut. Like, you're not using straight." But they didn't understand.
You say it's cut. You mean different amounts?
It's mixed in.
It's so they'll use like a cut. So okay, so where if you have Tylenol, what are those called? codeine, Tylenol with codeine, right? The codeine is cut with Tylenol. Okay. So when you have something like heroin or like fentanyl and it's cut, you're throwing something in there that is fluff. It's just,
It's like a filler.
it's a filler. It's just taking up space. It's not going to hopefully harm you when you use it. And it's just there. So that way you can have some fentanyl, but look like you have more product.
Now I'm interested.
It's a mind trick.
Does that help the dealers out?
Yeah. Yes.
Big time?
Oh, yeah.
From a business dealer side point? Like,
yeah. So,
because you're adding filler in there, which doesn't give you the effect that you're wanting.
but fentanyl is so potent that you don't need it. So if I would sell you fentanyl and I gave you the tiniest little, like, from my fingernail and was like, here you go. Have a good day. Thank you for the $60. You have a great day. You're not going to want that. But if I give you 6 bags that are filled and say, well, thank you for the $60. You have a great day. Your mind's going to be like, this is wonderful. Okay, I have so much. When really you have the same amount. It's just a filler.
Gotcha.
And it's easier to use too, because if I'm dumping out a fingertip full of product, I'm going to lose some of it. I have more of a chance to not get that into my body. But if I'm dumping out a big heaping pile of it and oops, some stuck in the bag, it's whatever, I'm not going to be so mad. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got you. Yeah, I never
this
really.
Is all new to us.
It's interesting. Did you ever do Oxy?
So in my big magical bags of Ziploc bags when I first started using, they had the real Oxycontins in them.
Okay.
The ones that you could actually break without trying to like break your hand. And at that time I was more interested in Xanax and Ativan.
Are they the same family?
No, those are benzos. So
Explain.
sorry.
She's giving us an education.
So these aren't like the what do you call them? Psychotic drugs, or like the ones that give you like psychedelic, the illusions and stuff?
No.
This is a different.
This is for like anxiety.
Okay.
So if you have a panic attack, boom, take a Xanax, you'll be cured, type thing.
It like calms your nerves down.
Yes. Yep. But they're still body dependent, so you still will go through withdrawal if you don't have them. But that's what I ended up taking and wrecking my car. So I was more interested in that. I tried an Oxycontin and I was like, yeah, this is not for me. I was nodding out. I, at that time, did not like that feeling. I was like sick to my stomach. I wasn't into that either.
You just felt like you didn't have control.
Yeah, I was driving my car home and falling asleep. So I was like calling people and trying to stay awake while I was driving. And I was like, this is stupid. Who would do this?
The reason I ask is because I'm reading this book right now, and that's what he got started on. And it was just so strong. That's an opioid too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then he goes from that to heroin.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of these people go to next is heroin. And then they get stuck on that. And then you brought up methadone before we got on here.
Yeah. So when I broke up with Lydia's dad, I called my mom on her birthday. And I was like, hey, Mom, happy birthday. You're right, I'm pregnant. And
not bad.
Does your mom know that you're using it this time?
No.
Okay. So
No.
all this, every time you're talking about your mother to this point, she had no idea.
She knew that I did use, that I've
Okay.
gone to rehab and everything.
Okay.
But at this point, she had no idea because I was using it for about a month and a half that I
Okay.
had relapsed.
Okay.
She had no idea about that.
Okay.
So when I called her, I was like, hey, like, you know, he's sitting here and he's screaming at his kids and he's screaming at me and I really got to go. And, oh, yeah, and I'm pregnant. And so my mom was like, all right, well, your stepdad and I will be there in like 5 minutes. And I swear they live like 25 minutes away, but it seemed like a minute that they were there. She knew it was bad and that I had to go. And we packed up my mom's entire Escalade of all my crap. And I got to her house and I was there maybe 2 or 3 days. And my mom called me into her bedroom and said, listen, I don't care what your decision is. I don't care. You do whatever makes you happy, but you cannot be a mom and a drug addict. You can be one or the other, and I don't care which one you choose. But if you're going to be a mom, you're going to be a mom. And if you're going to be a drug addict, then that's fine. You can be a drug addict. You're not going to do it here. You got to go. But you can't have this baby and be using drugs. And I was like, crap. And I probably didn't make my decision right away. I probably went and used, and then I was like, all right, what am I going to do? And so I called an OBGYN and was like, hey, I'm using and I'm pregnant. And they were like, oh, we'll call this super doctor because she's wonderful and she'll help you out. And
so we're going for all you said. And what? NY.
OBGYN, that's a female doctor.
That's a baby doctor.
That's a baby doctor.
Okay, I was just curious.
He's learning all kinds of stuff today.
There's a lot going on here.
That's a baby doctor. So I called the baby doctor, and then and they were like, call this other one who she works with women in recovery, and she's just amazing. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so I went to her, and she was like, hey, Michelle, so would you like an abortion? And I was like,
wow.
That was our first words to you?
Yeah. And I was like, most definitely not.
Would you consider that stigma?
That just gave me a goosebumps.
You have no idea what I went through when I was pregnant. It was bad. So I was like, yeah, no, that's not what I'm here for. I'm actually here for having a baby. So we're going to do that. And she was like, okay, well, here's the information about abortion, blah, blah, blah. 4 visits in, my mom actually came into the appointment with me because this was my 4th one. And I was still going through withdrawal, and it was really rough. And she said, I just want to just let you know about an abortion. And I was like, that's it. Are you with me? Are we having this baby or not? Like, because at that point I had fully made up my decision. Like, I'm having this baby. And she was like, oh, well, the Subutex isn't working for you. So she had prescribed me Subutex, which was supposed to help with withdrawal. But fentanyl is so potent that it doesn't really, you can't kind of, just cover it up with Subutex. It just didn't work. And then when you're pregnant, you have a different blood mass, so you kind of need a higher dose of almost anything. So it just really wasn't working out for me. Well, she was like, oh, I can send you this magic rehab, and they'll start you on methadone. And that's the quickest way to get you started on methadone because it's regulated and it's hard to get into a clinic immediately. So let's send you there. Great. So I went to this terrible rehab in Philadelphia. It was the only one that would accept women that were pregnant and would start them on methadone. And they started me on like 20 milligrams of methadone, which was pretty low, but that's usually what they start everybody out on. And then a couple days they'll up your dose. And while I was there, I was not feeling really good, but hey, I'm in my first trimester. I'm kind of sick all the time. And I finally ate after like a week of being there. I didn't eat anything. And as soon as I got back to my room, I got in bed and I was just crying. I was just in so much pain. My stomach hurt. And I kind of gone through a lot of crap with this rehab. Like, I didn't usually rehab, you go and they'll send you to these classes and they'll send you to these meetings and everything during the day. You learn all about addiction in your brain and all these things. I would just hide under my bed and I wouldn't go to any of them. I would let them lock me in my room, and that's where I stayed all day with my 3 roommates. Well, because this rehab was terrible, so I was like, I'm just going to stay in here because it's safer. Almost everybody was using, drugs were cheaper in there than I've ever seen in my entire life. Everyone was sharing the same needle, so it was like... I
mean, you heard stories about how it's cheaper because they know where you're at. The dealers know where you're at, and they want to sell it to you.
Well, this rehab was one that, like, basically people from jail would go to. So if you go to jail and you're like, I'm super sorry, I want rehab instead of going to jail, they'll say, okay, we're going to send you, but if you mess up, you go straight to jail. Well, that was like...
That's rehab
that was this rehab that I went to. So they would like.
Did you have a choice to go to whichever rehab you wanted to?
No, because this was like the only one that accepts pregnant women. So that was where I was at. I didn't have any choice. And Pennsylvania is very limited on rehabs and pregnant women. Very limited.
Never even thought about
Still
that.
to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. And this is the option that they give pregnant women.
Do you feel like they need to change that?
Definitely.
That would help out benefit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure so many people that were in my shoes that are pregnant. They don't know if they want to be a mom. They're giving it a chance, and then what?
The right place.
You're not at the right place. So, I had like girls. I mean, I had 3 roommates. 2 were pregnant. 1 wasn't. So the one that wasn't, of course, they were all tonguing their pills, and they'd have a whole party in my room. And so all of us pregnant girls are just kind of sitting there like, this is awkward. And so it was a mess of a rehab. So my mom tried to call, and I tried to tell her what a mess it was. And my counselor hung up on her and wouldn't let me talk to her. And so when I was laying in bed crying, because my stomach was really, really hurting, and I couldn't figure out why, and I knew that it was not normal stomach pain. I had my roommate get one of the doctors or nurses or whatever, and they were like, "Oh, you're just constipated. It'll be fine. Drink some water." And I'm like, for one, this is my 5th rehab, and I'm 30 years old, so I kind of know what I feel like if I'm constipated. This is not normal. Something's wrong. And I'm pregnant. I'm 9 weeks pregnant. Like, something's wrong. And they're like, no, it'll be fine. Well, 3 hours later, I'm still in excruciating pain. My roommate ends up trying to bust into a counselor's office to call 911 because we've all screamed at everybody that we can and no one's doing anything. They finally call somebody that wasn't working in to drive me to the emergency room to find out that I needed surgery, which was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I needed my gallbladder removed. So my mom called. My whole pregnancy and beginning of recovery was a mess. It was a mess. I'm so glad I'm where I am now.
That's good though.
Yeah, it was chaotic. And at that point, it was just, I had fully committed to, I'm going to be a mom, that I just basically threw my hands up and was like, somebody tell me where to go and somebody tell me what to do, because I can't make any decisions. Like, please don't ask me if I want pizza or tacos, because I don't know. Just make one. Like, because at that point I just couldn't make any decision. So they called my mom because she was my emergency contact. And my mom called the emergency room and was like, what the hell's going on? And I'm like, Mom, I never wanted to leave any rehab. I swear to God. Blah, blah, blah. And like, I don't think I breathed for like 3 minutes and was like, you got to get me out of here. And this was on a Sunday night. And my mom is relentless. Like, if she wants something, it's going to happen. And so she called me Monday morning, and they, if you are pregnant and you leave, they will call CYS to keep an eye on you, because you're mistreating. It's not technically a baby yet or a person yet. That's in their eyes. They don't see it that way.
CYS is Children Youth Services.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
That's all right.
So, they will call so that way they can keep an eye on you and make sure that you're not neglecting and reverting back to where you were. So I couldn't just pack my stuff and leave. I had to have some type of aftercare set up, and I can't just sit around and call methadone clinics and beg for them to accept me. So Monday, my mom called everybody in the world, it seemed, and they actually had built a clinic that was 45 minutes one way for us to go. And that was in Hanover. So I went to Hanover Treatment Center. Amazing methadone clinic. Amazing. But she called Monday. She picked me up Tuesday. And we left from Philly. We went straight to Hanover. We filled out everything we had to fill. And then Wednesday morning, I dosed. And then Thursday morning, I was in the emergency room so I could get my surgery done, because I did not want Philly to give me my surgery.
Okay.
So I was in the emergency room for about 4 days, with they admitted me to maternity, where I had a baby doctor.
Thank you.
And he was like from Texas. I don't know. He was on call, and he came in the room and was like, "So why did you leave rehab after 7 days?" And I'm like, "Well, sir, as you know, I need surgery." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't think you do." And I'm like, "Well, I went to this emergency room. Like, they can send you everything." He was convinced that I was drug seeking and that I was fine. And so he told my mom that I didn't need surgery, that this was a mental problem. I did the crazy sign to my mom. And we're tired. We've driven cross country and we're exhausted. I've been up throwing up. And so it's just been a lot within the last week. And so my mom couldn't even fight back, which was very odd because she's a fighter.
She was exhausted.
Yeah, she was exhausted. I was exhausted. And at that point, I was like, they're yelling at each other. And I'm like, you both just need to stop. I'm just going to die in peace. Like, just leave me alone. And he was like, well, if you think that now it's Thursday. If I'm getting a surgeon in here on the weekend, you're highly mistaken. Like, it takes that long. But shockingly enough, my mom put her foot down and made him get somebody to come in and look at my gallbladder. And the guy was like, emergency surgery right now. We need to remove it. And so, of course, the baby doctor was super mad and super annoyed with us.
Yeah, but you guys had the evidence.
Yeah.
There was everything there.
This is stigma.
Yep. It was the whole stigma. It was me being on methadone. It was, me leaving rehab. Why would I leave rehab so early? Because the way that they put it, that I left rehab was against medical advice, because obviously I'm leaving rehab early and whatever. And I could have stayed there to get my surgery, but like, y'all let me die in the bed for 4 hours. I'm not sitting here while I recover. No. So, yeah, it was completely stigma. The guy that gave me my surgery, amazing. He was amazing. His office was about a block away from the hospital, so I don't know why he was so busy. He just couldn't come, couldn't make it. But we got down to the OR, and he was like, "Can I pray for you?" And prayed for me and Lydia both. Like, amazing guy. Got my surgery and felt completely better. And so I was recovering on that while not being on a stable dose of methadone. So I was still going through withdrawal.
Did they give you anything post-surgery for your pain or anything?
No.
So you didn't have any pain?
Well, so they kind of did. I made it very clear that I did not want anything at all.
Okay.
At all.
Just curious.
I didn't know anything about methadone clinics. What I know is what people told me. And like, what people told me was basically methadone clinics are out to get your money. They don't care about you, and they'll kick you out over anything. So my impression was like, I just got dosed, on Wednesday, and now I've been gone for days. They're going to kick me out definitely. And if they don't, you better not give me any opiates to give them a reason to kick me out.
Right.
So I was terrified. So I like came to from surgery, and some lady asked me if I was feeling any pain. I said yes. She gave me something. She asked me if I was still feeling pain. I said, yeah, a little bit. And she went to give me something again. And I said, what are you giving me? And she said, fentanyl.
What?
Oh my.
And I was like, okay, can you get some Tylenol? Can you find Tylenol right now? Do not give me any more.
Did they know you were out? The nurse did too?
Yep. Everybody knew. I made sure from the door, please do not. I talked to the surgery guy, my surgeon. I talked to everybody. Do not give me opiates. I don't want anything for pain. I just want Tylenol.
That's crazy that they're willing to do it. They're still willing to give you the.
Yep.
Even though that's crazy.
Yep. So,
So she gave you fentanyl and
she gave me fentanyl. Found out. So I had 2 doses of that before I threw a whole fit. And I was like, this isn't happening. Tylenol, that's all I want. And when he discharged me, he said, I don't know what prescription to discharge you with, because we usually give a painkiller. I said, I have Tylenol at home. I've gotten through 2 days now, or a day and a half. It's fine. I ate blueberry pancakes this morning. I'm happy. Like, I got to go. So, my methadone helped. It helped with some pain. But like I said, I was on a very low dose. So
when you say pain, like your sickness?
Like from surgery.
Oh,
so
from surgery.
it does help. Like,
okay, so it helped with your surgery too.
Yeah, it does help with pain or like chronic pain. A lot of people kind of stay on it because of the chronic pain, and it's better than being on opiates. So they get on methadone, so that way it's just a little bit easier on them. So I finally got on a stable dose of methadone, and because they have to keep increasing your dose. You can't just walk through the door and be like, okay, I'll take 90 milligrams, because you don't know if that's going to be too high for somebody or not. So they have to start you as low as they can and then bump you up every couple of days.
And that's on them to bump you up? That's not your own suggestion? Because aren't you allowed to suggest how much you want?
Yeah. So my clinic, they increased by 10 milligrams. I went in the one day and was like, hey, I think I need an increase. And they increased me by 10. And I'm very sensitive to anything. And it was way too much. So I went in and was like, hey, this isn't working for me. Can I only increase by 5? Because that's going to work a little bit better. And then towards the end of my pregnancy, I was only increasing by 3 milligrams, just because I was like, there's no point in me doing 5 if 3 is working. So try 3. If 3 doesn't work, then we'll do 3 more in a couple days, and that's fine. My doctors, my nurse, my counselor, the director, everybody at my methadone clinic was so great. They were phenomenal. They were the very first people, even out of myself, my mom, to buy something for Lydia. They made me this like wreath, and they gave me a bunch of like little things for her. It was so cute.
That's cool.
But it didn't matter what I said. Everyone was like, no idea was a dumb idea. And that was great for me, because almost all addicts are controlling. They want control of everything that they are doing. And if you try and tell them what to do, well, then, you're a dirtbag. So when I would go in and say, I want to do this or I want to do that, they would all kind of talk, and it would be like, okay, well, let's try this instead. Sorry. Let's try this instead. Or let's do it your way, but I don't think it's going to work. So here's our backup plan for when that doesn't work, and still let me.
They didn't completely deny what you were saying.
Yeah,
they kind of just, they considered too.
That's very well-trained people.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was lucky enough for my methadone doctor to be a retired baby doctor. So,
Cool.
Okay.
So I went in, I told him about my whole hospital experience, and he was like, you need a new OBGYN right now. And called somebody, and 7:00 that night, they called me, and I had a new OB that day. So it was under the circumstances, it was amazing to have who I had there. They wrote letters. So when you're pregnant, after you have the baby, they keep the baby in the hospital for 7 days at least for observation to make sure they're not withdrawing from methadone. During that time, they will medicate with like morphine if they have to, and then taper them off of morphine.
So they actually give the baby morphine?
Yes. Yeah. If they're going through withdrawals from the mom's methadone, then they will treat with morphine, because it's quick. So it's in your system, out of your system quicker. Methadone has like a long half-life. So that means when you take it, I take my dose at 10:00 every day.
It's like time released.
Yeah. So I can wait till like 2:00 in the afternoon the next day, and I'm not going to feel any problem. So with morphine, it's quicker. So it stops the withdrawals, but then you can taper off of that a lot easier. Sorry. So I went and I did the whole tour of the NICU and everything. And I even met the NICU doctor that was over the whole NICU, and I asked him 32,000 questions on how to kind of lessen the chance, which we kind of talked about the one group. I'm a moderator for medication assisted treatment, and it gives so much information. It's called MATIS, is MATIS. And that's where I got most of my information about methadone, about being pregnant, about what to ask my doctors. I mean, almost everything in the world I learned from that group.
Is that a local organization?
Though it's not local. It's a group. It's got like over 2,000 members. They're from everywhere. They're from the United States. There's some from England, Australia. I mean, it's just a huge group of people that are all either on methadone, on Suboxone, on Subutex. They all want information. Maybe they have a family member. Maybe they're a doctor themselves that wants to educate themselves more, or they're on it themselves and they're just like me, that were clueless when you started. You had no idea how to do it all. So it's a great place for information and for correct information. I used to be a part of like several methadone groups, and there was so much misinformation out there. So this one's definitely a good one.
And what's it called again?
It's called Medical Assisted Treatment Information. I think that's what it is. Or, but it's shortened into MATIS, MATIS.
Okay.
So if you search that, it'll bring it up, and it'll have like a big parentheses of like all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I turn to for most of everything. You can dim the lights in their room, so that kind of helps where it's not stimulating for them to like kind of make them more wired and like whatever. And then you can do like skin to skin contact, which lessens the chance of, them kind of going through withdrawal. It kind of helps them maintain their body temperature better. I did like minimal visits. My little sister, who is my very best friend, she's 18 now, but she was, 16 when my daughter was born, and she didn't meet my daughter until day 5, I think it was, because I just wanted minimal contact. It was my mom and I, and that was it. And so just like little things, which there's a million things that you can do to try to relax them a little bit more. So during that time, then Children, Youth, and Services comes and they'll pay you a visit, and they want to know, basically if you're doing good in your program, if you have a good support system at home. They come do a home check. They make sure that the baby's safe when you go home. And then you just sit there. The babies go through like a scoring system. So they score them on like if they have watery eyes, if they have a runny nose, if they're crying and inconsolable, if they're eating properly, just all these crazy things, like how their stool is, if they're even going, if they're sneezing, if they're yawning, which a lot of these are like normal
Normal
baby
symptoms.
things. Yeah, like when a baby's born, they sneeze a lot, they yawn a lot, they're tired, they're a baby. They poop a lot because they're eating a lot, because they sleep a lot. Like, so it was really hard to like, what do we do? Like, so they will score them, and basically how well they score determines if they're going to start morphine or not. So if they score, I think it was like a 12 or above 2 times in a row, they're on morphine.
What's the time frame there that they're looking at all this?
Like how often do they score?
Yeah.
Like every 3 or 4 hours.
Okay.
They're scoring.
So it's hourly.
Yeah. So they'll do that, and then if they hit high scores 2 times in a row, or if they hit like a 15 one time or something, I forget what it was because it's been 3 years. But they automatically start. Well, Lydia, of course, was born. Everything was semi-fine. She was born. She had 2 holes in her heart, which was not methadone related. So she was blue and not really breathing, and had to go to the NICU anyways. And then her blood sugar was kind of wonky, and kids go through that too. So she was in the NICU, and it was like her third day or something, and I'm tired. I mean, I just had a baby, and we just went through, like, they took her for like 8 hours to examine her heart and everything. So I wasn't even allowed to see her the first 8 hours she was born. I'm walking back and forth from the NICU to maternity. It's pretty crazy. Of course, they put me right next to the nurse's station, so nobody could come visit me without them knowing. Like, they were very down my throat about it. I didn't care.
Yeah.
My mom was the only one that was coming to visit me. I have no friends, so like whatever. So I go over to the NICU, and this nurse comes in, and she's like, "Oh, so we're gonna give her one vaccine." And I was like, "No, we're gonna wait and do that in the pediatrics office." And she was like, "Well, why?" And I'm like, "Well, if you're scoring her on fevers and fever-like symptoms or flu-like symptoms, why are you going to give her a vaccine where it causes fever and flu-like symptoms?" I said, "I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait, and we're going to do it outside of here." And she was like, "Well, where's the father to this baby?"
Wow.
And I'm like, "Well, he's probably in Harrisburg in his boxers selling drugs. I don't know. Like, I didn't ask him where he's been the last 6 months. I don't know what to tell you." So she's like, "I just don't know that you're educated enough to make this decision." And I'm like,
that's crazy.
and my mom's standing there, and my mom's like, "Oh my gosh, we're about to go to jail." Like, so I'm like, "Listen, my ankles are swollen. I'm hungry. I'm tired. I am educated enough to know you better find another nurse to walk through that screen right now." Like, don't mess with me. So my mom's like, I said, "If you don't find somebody else to take care of my child, there's going to be huge problems. So go find me a different nurse and bring her in here, and we're going to just continue with this. And if another nurse discusses any type of vaccine with me, you better find a different one. Find one that doesn't talk about vaccines, because I'm not hearing it in here." She was like, "Okay." And we had a different nurse. Funny enough that my daughter only scored high with that nurse, but hey, whatever. And like high meaning like 5s and 6s. Lydia was scoring like 1s and 2s the entire time we were there. So when we hit day 4 of being there, they discharge you from maternity. Well, that means I no longer have a place to stay, because NICU only allows the child to stay there. I can't sleep there. I can't do any of that. They were kind enough to discharge her from the NICU and take her up to pediatric wing. So I packed my stuff, I packed her stuff, and we all moved upstairs together. So I never had to leave the hospital. I never did anything. I told Lydia about a month before I had her that she had to come on a Monday, that I was not playing. And she came 3 weeks early on a Monday.
Wow.
So I had take homes from my methadone clinic. So I only had to leave the hospital one time to take my bottles back, get new take homes, and then I'd be at the hospital the rest of the time. So I left the hospital after we moved up to the pediatric wing. And when I came back, the nurse was like, "Oh, I saw you left." And I'm like, "Yep, had to go get my methadone." "Oh, did you drive?" "Nope, don't even have a car."
Oh my.
"Thank you though." Like, they were just, and then of course I was in the pediatric wing. We were right beside the nurse's station. We weren't allowed to have any visitors that they didn't know about.
Do they tell you that, or you just know?
You just know.
Okay.
Like, they're relentless. Everyone is always in your room at some point in time.
Okay.
And I probably got in trouble 5 or 6 times for falling asleep with Lydia. Like, I would set pillows up. It wasn't like I was nodding out from methadone. I would set pillows up, and we would lay there and we would cuddle and sleep. It was like the hugest no. I would get in trouble all the time. Whatever. It's my kid. So she was doing pretty good. Then this nurse came, and she was like, "Yeah, so we're going to change her formula." And I'm like, "Why?" "Well, WIC doesn't cover your formula." okay, well, I'm not even on WIC, but thank you.
They're like trying to tell you how to do all this stuff. Like,
Yeah, no, you have no control over what you want to do with your kid. So I was like, well, I'm not on WIC. And she's like, well, we already ordered this formula, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, guess that's what we're doing. And so, of course, Lydia hated the formula. And they come back in like 5 hours later. We changed her formula again because she doesn't like that one. And, you know, she's scoring higher. And I'm like, well, duh. Like, of course she's scoring higher because you're changing stuff up. And they gave me this formula that I had to mix differently and give her a higher calorie and whatever. So that way, because she was kind of dropping weight. Most babies do. That's what babies do when they're born. They drop weight. So then the lady comes in like, I don't know, a half hour later. She says, all right, we're going to take all the formula out of your room and we're going to premix it for you and you're going to feed every 4 hours. I said, no, I'm doing free feeding. That means if she wants to eat an ounce right now and 6 hours from now, she eats 15,000 ounces and she doesn't eat until 6 days from tomorrow. That's what she does. She eats when she's hungry, not when I tell her she's hungry. Oh, no, we're not doing that. Then they come back to my room and they say, yeah, she just scored a 15. We're going to start her on morphine. And I was like, holy Hannah, I'm done. What do I need to do? And that's when I got on one of my methadone groups and I was like, what do I do? I'm lost. I have no control. Like these people are just telling me, and my family, God love them, like they didn't want to live in the hospital for multiple days. So it's basically just Lydia and I there. I didn't have any backup for them to be like, to fight a family. You know, right. It basically felt like it was me on methadone fighting a nurse who was like 9,000 who probably had kids and did it her own way and thought I should do it her way. So, I got told to call the pediatrician and they will come into the hospital. And this very nice lady came in and said, what's going on? I said, here's all the things. They want to give her morphine. I don't know what to do. And she said, what do you think needs done? I said, get the formula back in my room. Give me back the old formula that she liked and give it 3 hours and see where we're at. Well, don't you know, everything was fine. Everything went back to normal. My kid was happy. She was gaining weight. Everything was fine. So, that was like towards the end of my stay there. Of course, when I was getting my dose of methadone and I had to leave the hospital, that's when CYS came, when my family was there and they could talk to them without me being there. So I walked back from getting my doses and there's this guy and he's like, oh yeah, I'm almost done interviewing your mom, so I'll interview you next. And I'm like, who are you? What do you want? Like, it was absolutely ridiculous.
And this all goes back to stigma because people look at a drug user who's pregnant and they just feel like they don't deserve that child. Like some of the books that I read, like they don't deserve it. So they're looking at you as you can't take care of this child because you can't take care of yourself. And it's not necessarily the case. And pretty much it's making you feel like a piece of shit. That you don't deserve this little girl who's beautiful and running around. So
destroying everything.
It just blows my mind that, I mean, they're healthcare workers and they have that stigma. They shouldn't be in that business if that's how they feel.
And the most ironic thing was the one nurse that was Lydia's nurse was also Lydia's dad's, like, other child's grandmother. So, like, you already know me and you're taking care of my kid. Like, what are you doing? Like, I didn't even know that would be acceptable, which I didn't really care. I had nothing to hide, so I didn't care. So when the Children Youth Services guy came, I was already ready. I had a letter from my probation officer. I had a letter from my clinic. I had, from my clinic, I had the director of the clinic, I had my doctor, I had my counselor, and I had the nurse. And they all wrote character witness letters of that, like how many appointments I missed, how many appointments I was late to, how many appointments I rescheduled, everything. Like, and I never missed any appointment. Like, when you told me to be there, I was there. So I gave him all that, and I gave him a history of my drug tests. I gave everything I could. And he was like, all right. So they came and did a home test. And he was probably one of the nicest. Dealing with children, youth, and services was easier than dealing with the nurses. I had more issues dealing with the nurses than I did dealing with him. He was great. He was wonderful. He came and did my home visit, and he held Lydia the whole time and walked around my house with Lydia and was like, this looks great, and left. He closed my case early. They're supposed to do 3 random drug tests. They did like 1 or 2 and closed my case.
So if you could give us like an overview from like your start to the end of your addiction you're using, could you do that for us as far as like where you started, kind of how you went through it and then ended? You're not really ended, but are you still on methadone?
Okay, so I started when I was 19 or 18, 19, using Vicodin, dabbling with like benzos, Xanax and Ativan, and then went to Percocet and heroin.
Okay. Then
it graduated to fentanyl. That was over like an 11-year span.
So you used it for 11 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went into rehab my first time towards like 10 years, and then through that last like year and a half was when I was in and out of rehabs trying to figure it out. I went into the rooms. I did NA. I did AA. I got a sponsor doing both. I started the steps, and I'd always relapse. When I started methadone, I was so against methadone just because of the stigma. There's, it's funny because there's a stigma around, addicts, but there's also that stigma that's around methadone and any medically assisted treatment as well. Like basically, if you're not doing abstinence and you're not completely, I hate using the word clean. I try and use the word recovery because I've been in recovery a long time. I haven't been clean, but none of us have been clean. Like if you had a soda today, you're probably not clean. You had caffeine. You had a boatload of sugar,
Mm-hmm. And I read that on your Stigma page, and I really like that. So I use that now when I talk to people that I know that are in recovery. I say that. Like, because you're in recovery.
It's just a more accepting term. Because a lot of people that are on any medically assisted treatment, they feel guilty because they can't say, yeah, I'm clean, or no, I'm clean. And then they have family members that are like, well, you're not clean because you're on methadone. Well, methadone took me to school. Methadone brought me my daughter, made me be a good mom. Methadone got me to graduate beauty school, got me started in my career. I built a house on methadone. I tapered off of methadone. I started my taper as soon as Lydia was born. And that was not planned. It was just my dose was too high when I had her because of the blood mass and everything. So once I started my taper, I just kind of kept going with it. I felt good. Everything felt fine. In real life, I was like, I'm going to have this baby, and once she's a year old, I'm going to start to taper. And because I thought that's when it got easier. I thought that's when it got easier with kids, was when they hit a year old. So I actually tapered before she even turned a year old. I was off of methadone. I did Vivitrol for a year and a half, and I've been off of Vivitrol for 6 months or so. So
awesome. So you're totally off of everything right now.
Yep. I've been off of everything for like 6 months.
But 3.5 years in recovery.
Yep.
Congratulations. Yep. That's huge.
Thanks. I basically have learned that when you're in recovery, it doesn't just stay the same. Like if it stays the same, you stay the same. And I felt like I kept outgrowing things. I started on Vivitrol, and I had to go to this like monthly therapy session so that way I could still get it. And then I finally was like, I'm outgrowing. Like, I need more. This once a month for an hour, like, what am I taking? I'm not taking away from this. I'm driving 45 minutes to sit an hour, and I wasn't growing. I wasn't gaining anything from it. I stopped doing that. Once I stopped doing therapy, I was just getting my Vivitrol shot because I talked to my doctor and was like, this is how I feel. If I have some issues, I'll come back. But I just feel like that's not what I need right now. And after I got done therapy and stopped doing that, then I started doing, that's when I created the Addiction Stigma page. And I started going into Red Lion High School and talking to 9th graders in their health.
In the health class.
In the health class.
Awesome.
Telling my story there. So I started going in and talking to 9th graders and, just telling my story. And you would be amazed at, I give like a little survey at the end that says like, what did you learn? What did you like? What did you not like? And the kids that said what they liked was that I was so honest and open. I think a lot of us that are in recovery or that were addicts and everything, they come from a generation where, the DARE program came in and said, don't do drugs or you'll die. And that didn't tell us anything because we did drugs and we didn't die and it was fun and it was great. And, years later then we died and we didn't realize that it wasn't an immediate thing. But the amount of kids that just said, I loved how open and honest and real you were. Like, that's what we need. I truly, truly believe that the biggest impact on the opioid epidemic comes from reaching children and stopping it there. Not that us adults are hopeless, but we're not going to make as big of an impact getting people clean if we don't make an impact keeping people
from using in the first place. We talked about that. I'm glad to hear that Red Lion is open to allowing you to do that.
Yeah, my friend is a teacher there and knows teachers and that she said the teacher made a post on Facebook and was like, I don't know anybody. She's like, I don't even know anybody that has an alcohol problem, let alone any drugs. I don't know how to be real with these kids. And, you go in and there's girls in there that are on their second child that are in 9th grade that live in a pregnancy house. Like they need someone. And I went in and there's, one little girl who her mom's in and out of the methadone clinic and in and out of rehabs and her dad's in jail. And I ended up going back the next day and spending an hour with that little girl, just talking. Like, and that's all she needed. She was in foster care and she just needed somebody to talk to. And like, I really believe that that's what we need to be able to help end all this.
I think that's huge. And we talked about that. We went to a Red Line. There was a speaker there in Red Line and we said the same thing. The police officers can go in and they can say, don't do drugs. The teachers can say it. These kids are going to do what they're going to do, but to bring somebody the realistic part, they get to see that in you and connect. And
well, and it's a lot.
That's awesome.
It's so much different to be like, hey, I graduated from here.
Yeah, because they can all relate.
Yeah,
that's that instant relation.
I grew up on 25 acres of a big ass farmhouse. My parents had money. I didn't come from the trailer park down the road. My parents, now they divorced when I was 13, but that was probably the best day of my life. Like, they weren't happy together, and it just made it so much easier on me. But, like, I didn't really come from, now, like, I have a history of sexual abuse, and, like, so I had my reasons as to why I used, but the stigma around addiction is that it's these, low life trailer park people that, are just not, they don't have their lives together. So that's why they use drugs. And that's not what I came from at all. Not at all. My mom, I have seen my mom drunk one time in my entire life. And she wasn't even drunk. It was the next morning. She was sleeping in my bed. And I was like, what the hell? Yeah. And I was probably like 18 or 19. And I was living with her at the time, right before I moved out. And that's when I saw her in my bed the next morning. So she wasn't even drunk. But She was hungover.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, that's cool. You're going to Red Line and doing those kind of things.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. That's ultimately what I created the group for. I have business cards I handed out to the kids, and I let them join because they can see what we post. They can see like anybody reaching out, anybody struggling, or get any education, or a lot of them want to know how to help their parents, which is sad, but
it happens.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
So just tell us again for the listeners, what is the page, what's it called, and how do they find it?
So if you go on Facebook, you can type in your search engine on Facebook, End the Addiction Stigma, and it will come up. It's going to ask you 2 questions. Basically just wants to know that you're not going to come in and be a jerk, because we are a very safe place. It's a private group. You can post anything you want in the world, and nobody on your friends list is going to be able to see it unless they are part of the group. We also allow anonymous messages, so you can message me. If you go under the group members, it'll say admins and moderators, and you can message anybody in there if you're not comfortable messaging me. And none of us talk. So my mom is, we have like a support group as well with everybody with different backgrounds. So if you want to talk to somebody who is a mother of somebody who used, or me who did the methadone Vivitrol route, or somebody that is in NA or AA, somebody that has an alcohol problem. I mean, we have everything on there that you can reach out to a person, and none of us, it won't go to any other group member at all. If it's a private message, it stays strictly private. None of us even communicate, because that's just what people need.
Exactly. And I appreciate it. I had the privilege of being accepted on your page. And what I like is, especially now with this epidemic, all these meetings have to be through Zoom. Like, I appreciate that you're putting in there where they can actually go, because the people that I know, the Zoom kind of helps, but they just need to be around people. And so it kind of helps. I actually used it twice. I'm like, hold on, let me get on this page and see. And he's like, really? And he's a guy that I know from work, and I'm like, let me check. Let me check for you. And
I know a lot of people do, just throwing it out there, a lot of people do have the issues with the Zoom. InTheRooms.com also does any type of meeting that you can think of. Overeaters Anonymous, Al-Anon, Narcanon, Weed Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, lovers, addicts, sex and love addiction. Like, I mean, any meeting you can think of, almost every couple hours they have a meeting.
And what's that?
That's intherooms.com.
Okay.
You have to create like a little profile or whatever, but it's really cool. What I like about it is that you can see everybody that's in the meeting, and you can also request to share. And you can share in that meeting too. And it's people from all over the world again.
Okay.
So it's really great. It was a great tool in helping me in the early stages of recovery. The first couple of times I got clean and tried to figure life out. Somebody's always awake. Okay. You can instant message people. Somebody's always there, and it's wonderful. And it's definitely a really, really cool thing to have.
Yeah. And your page, I also saw someone was asking for a ride one night.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It gives me tears and goosebumps, because
I offered, but it was a male and they wanted a male.
Yeah. I saw that you offered, and I'm like, how cool is that? These people are willing to help each other. And one of the things that I learned are people in addiction really try to help each other in addiction. Like, it's a group, a tight group.
Yeah. We had a member when I first opened the page. It's funny how things work, because I opened it and I wanted to send people Christmas cards that had lost loved ones, or that felt like they weren't that felt like something was missing. I wanted to be able to send them a Christmas card. We also open our home to let people come over for Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner, just in case they don't have anywhere to go, or they don't have, even if it's addicts that don't have anywhere to go, or if it's people who lost, their children that they're kind of missing something. But I posted in this other group that I'm a part of. It's like a free group for the area, and I was like, hey, I need some Christmas cards. And this lady was like, oh yeah, I got some for you, you can come pick them up. And I'm like, oh cool. She's like, I really like why you're getting these cards. And I was like, I didn't tell you why. And she was like, I have 4 children that are using, and I'm part of your other group. And I was like, that's crazy. And 2 weeks later, she messaged me and was like trying to go to rehab and doesn't have a ride. And I was like, all right, I'll be there in 5 minutes. And so I went and picked him up, took him to rehab, and bought him like a couple packs of cigarettes, took him some clothes. And he called me and like from detox and was like, they're sending me 2 hours away. And I was like, all right, well, I'll come visit you. And
awesome.
So I went and visited him. Unfortunately, he relapsed and lost his battle. So it's hard. Like it's so hard because you just want to grab somebody and just like shake them and be like, just get it. Like I have family members still that I just want to just shake and be like, just get it. Like meet my kid. She's cool as hell. You can't meet her if you're high. Like, so it sucks. At the same time, it's
difficult.
It's so difficult. It's so difficult. But I'm so grateful for it because the very first time I got clean, I probably could have gotten clean 2 years or 3 years before I ever went to, I requested to go to rehab and they called me and my parents didn't know I was using and I was so embarrassed and I didn't want them to know and like hate me. And so somehow I thought continuing to use was the answer after my car was repossessed and I was already like living in my friend's apartment. I somehow thought that going to rehab was like the embarrassing thing and that I should just not let my parents know. And that still resonates with me today. It's like, how many other people feel that way and currently, like, even though that was 11 years ago, currently feel that way and can't feel like they can't reach out because they're embarrassed.
I think Kyle was like that.
Yeah. We didn't know. We didn't know. I can't imagine. I often wonder what it would be like if he would have reached out and tried to get help because he hid it from us and some of his friends that share information with us say he was very actively using.
Yeah.
And it just blows our mind. And we asked those friends, did he ever want help? And they said they don't think so. So if he had a group or you're willing to pick these kids up, or they're not even just kids, sometimes they're grown men, you know, or girls. Like
we actually over this whole COVID thing, we raised with group members and myself included and everything, we've raised about $2,000 to pay for people to continue to get methadone because they're out of work and some are self-pay. Some clinics accept, like especially around here, they accept state insurance, they accept whatever insurance. Some clinics are self-pay only. They don't care what insurance you have to pay cash for that. You can't even pay a card. You have to pay cash.
Wow.
And so yeah, we raised about $2,000 to help keep people in recovery.
That's cool.
Kudos.
So that way.
So we should reach out to maybe some senators, Congress people. I is trying to get it with the Shatterproof group, which I was familiar with. We need to find ways with these stimulus packages. They want to help. I'm reading different articles where they want to help the addicts. So maybe we need to look into that. I'm going to look into that myself and see how we can help.
Yeah, it's definitely needed. I talked about some things as well. And I've also talked to the superintendent about trying to do something for Red Lion as well. So.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, I definitely, just COVID has put a damper on everything.
On a lot of people, a lot of different things too. So, awesome.
Yeah. Well, we can wrap this up.
Sounds like Lydia's done.
We definitely appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no problem.
You're very knowledgeable with a lot of things, and
come back anytime.
Absolutely, come back.
Without Lydia.
Oh no, she's okay. Thanks again.
Yeah,
we
thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Can you say bye?
Bye.
Can you say have a good day? Okay.